Good morning. Can you all hear me properly? It's great. Thank you so much for fighting through all the lines at all the various entrances with your elbows out and to make it here for the first presentation of this morning. I know it's a little hard work getting in sometimes, so I'm very grateful that so many people have got here. I also, and this will only be relevant to a certain number of people, but I feel it's a relatively small group. I need to share something. How many people here are football fans, soccer fans? How many people here are Bayern Munich fans? Okay, that's one. Yeah, that's quite good. If at any stage, so I heard I live in San Francisco, but you can probably tell I'm a Brit. If at any stage during the course of this presentation I just start to cry, those of you who don't know, just Google Bayern Munich versus Arsenal, and you will get some sense of why this morning I'm a little less full than I sometimes am. So yeah, thank you very much this morning. My name's Stephen Taylor. I represent a company called Sojern. The Sojern business is, just for a little bit of context, is a business that works with hundreds of large travel brands, but also thousands of small and independent hotels. And for all of those big and small companies, we aim to do one thing really, and that is to help them make really targeted advertising, marketing messages, right message, right person, right time. And we do this by collecting and harnessing billions of points of travel data from airlines, from OTAs, from hotels. And I'll say a little bit more about that coming up, because it's that sort of data that I want to explore with you today and show what it can mean. Because really what I want to explore is why are so many companies jumping on the sort of programmatic advertising area? Why are so many companies, travel companies in particular, looking to get involved in data-driven marketing? What is it that this data reveals for travel marketers, for all of us trying to do our jobs, that make it so very powerful? So the things I want to talk through today are very much about how we can connect some of those dots. First of all, what are the challenges for us as travel marketeers? What are the things that we are struggling with in today's consumers? Secondly, I want to dive deep into one particular set of data, which I hope will be interesting, revealing around what we often called the sort of pathways to purchase. What is it that people are doing before they make that booking at your hotel, your airline, that destination? And then thirdly, how do we start to harness that data and bring it together in such a way that we can connect those dots, see all these different things that people are doing everywhere, and start to use it to enhance and power our messages? So that's what I'm going to talk about. I hope that's something like you hoped I was going to talk about. Otherwise, you're sort of stuck for a little period of time. So first of all, let's talk about those challenges. Let's think about today's consumers, today's connected consumers with mobiles, with tablets, with laptops. It's people like us. So how do we shop? Well, we realize that when we shop, we now have access to all the world's information in our pockets with our mobile phones, that we have search capabilities, we have so many different ways to shop, compare. We do it without thinking. We think of something we want to do, and then we find another price, and then we compare it with something else. We can shop at almost any time of the day or night that we want to shop, from almost anywhere. I will almost guarantee, particularly if this presentation gets quite boring, that somebody during the course of this presentation will be looking at Amazon and actually buying something. That is what we do. We do it at work, we do it when we're walking around. So that's the sort of nature of today's consumers. And not only are we doing all those things, we do it in hundreds of different places, hundreds of different channels. We use Facebook and other social media to connect with our friends, to find out what they're doing, to share and compare and contrast. Did you like this? Did you see this movie? Did you buy those sneakers? What is it that you understood and that you know that can help me? And actually, when we're using a lot of these different things, the mode that we are in as consumers also varies. There are things when I'm really leaning forward and I'm actively searching. There are things where I'm just consuming. So again, you've got these super savvy consumers using multiple devices on hundreds of different channels for different purposes. So how, again, as marketeers, are we meant to be trying to connect with these people? At one level, it's great that there are so many opportunities, but what's the right moment if people are spending so much time doing so many different things in their online existence? And if that wasn't challenging enough, let's think about this as travel marketers, as people in the travel industry. We sort of all know this generically, but nobody, I think, outside the travel industry really understands just how complex it is. That if you've got all these channels, you've got all these opportunities, and you think about your own purchase behavior or think about a family holiday, you don't just decide and then book. You're going to research. You're going to look at reviews. You're going to price compare. If I want to, I mean, today's affluent consumers can go almost anywhere in the world that they want to go. And even a single trip, they can go through an OTA, they can book it all as one lump, they can compare and contrast, they can book a flight over here, a hotel over here, a car over here. So all of these different things are going on all the time when people are thinking about a travel purchase. And for most travel companies, hotels, destinations, even the big OTAs, the big travel agents, the only thing you can really know is the thing that that customer does on your site at the moment that they're on your site, or the history you have stored in your own databases about the thing they do with you. But what we've just realized when we look at everything else that's going on is that in their travel consumption, in them thinking about their holiday, their purchase, their flight, their business trip, they for sure aren't only looking at you. They're looking at 20, 30 other people over a sort of 30, 40-day period. So you might know this in a huge amount of depth, but actually that consumer is doing all of these things. So how do we connect those dots? How do we connect the very specific world that we all know at an individual brand level with the big world of what consumers are actually out there doing in relation to travel? And of course, again, the thing that we know as travel marketeers that most travel people don't understand is that for most of us, our products expire every night. You know, we can't sell tonight's hotel room tomorrow. It doesn't exist anymore. Sounds obvious to us, but in the world of marketing, that's a big challenge when you think about how fragmented everything is. So, how do you begin to connect the dots? Well, the first thing we want to be able to do, the ideal for, I guess, most of us as marketers, and particularly as travel marketers, is we'd really love to have a sense of the direction of travel, the pathway to a purchase. What are the phases I go through? Everybody goes through different phases. Everybody does different things, as we'll start to see with the data. But at some level, there may be a dream phase, a sort of, what am I thinking about? We could go here, we could go here, we could do, and then I'm going to start to narrow that down into a purchase set. Then I'm going to start to look at very specific things. Then I'm going to book, then I'm going to travel, then I'm going to be in the destination. All of these are distinct touch points for travel marketers. And it's crucial that we begin to understand where consumers are on that pathway, because the messages they're willing to consume, the messages that are going to resonate with them, are utterly different at each stage in that journey. So how do we connect those? How do we connect those dots? This is it's a sort of a graphic representation, but this is a graphic representation of how we see it at Sojern. So it's just one of a number of different ways of looking at this. But what we're seeking to do, and I think what is going to be so crucial for travel marketers everywhere, is to begin to link the specific things that you know on your own website, in your own CRM, your own databases, with everything else that's going on that those travelers are doing. And the only way of doing that is working with somebody who is building or has a very large data set, a cross-device data set, a data set that is looking at people's search and booking behavior across OTAs, across airlines, is linking that with other behavioral data, and critically, for this last year or so, is starting to link what people are doing on the web to what people are doing on their phones. So a sort of cross-device ID. Now, there's nobody in the world that has all of this for everybody, all beautifully laid out. But this is the sort of thing we are building actively and that sits at the heart of what we do. And I certainly would urge all of you to sort of start thinking about who to work with or how to engage with this level of data. Because let's start to look at what this data can actually tell us. And what I've tried to do next is take just one example of a client. It happens to be a client of ours, but it could, it could be a number of different players, and just look at what this data will reveal about the pathways to purchase. And I do put paths, or make that plural quite deliberately. Anybody who says this is the pathway to purchase is missing something, because there is no pathway to purchase. There are as many pathways to purchase as there are individuals, and that is the challenge that we're all trying to connect and realize. So I'm going to take one client. It's a very large American-based resort and attraction complex. I'm not going to name it, but all the data here is real data, is the data for this particular client. And before I go into the sort of macro pictures and all the different things that we can see that can maybe help somebody with a data-driven strategy, let's illustrate the point by taking a single booker on that has booked at this particular client, and just look at over a 5-month period what this person actually did, because I think this will sort of start to show us what's going on. So we're going to talk a little bit about Eric. I have no idea if Eric is his real name. The data we have is not personalized. I don't know his name, don't know the details of address. What I do know is, picking this customer almost at random, we can start to see his travel behaviors. And if we were looking at standard profiling based on the data of the things you can see about Eric, you'd go, well, he lives in Florida. We can see that he's got a family. He's got 2 kids under 18. We know that he has a loyalty card for this particular client of ours. And we can probably put him in a number of buckets. And those of you as marketers will have spoken to people who say, oh, I can identify frequent travelers, or he's an economy business traveler. He uses his mobile a lot. These are quite useful at a generic level, but that's the sort of general profiling people see. But let's say follow Eric for a period in relation to the things he did that touched this particular client and led to a booking. Okay, and I'll try and go through this quickly, but I think it makes the point. So, April 25th, Eric starts this cycle. And he starts looking at the homepage of this particular client. This client is very famous. It has a rich content on its homepage. So luckily for this client, a lot of people do go to the homepage early on in their shopping behavior to try and look at what they want to do. So about a month later, he starts sort of honing in on a few different travel dates, goes back, does even more searches, and is trying to play with a few different travel dates for the things that he wants to be able to do. Another period on, actually starts looking at the competitor and starts looking at other searches and other places he could do. So it's not just our client. He's now looking at somebody who isn't our client and thinking about what else they do. Remember, this is a loyalty card holder for our client. He's somebody who goes there a lot, but he's now looking at somewhere else. But another period on, and this is, we've already, weeks and weeks are elapsing. Another period on, Eric has now come back to the homepage. He started narrowing down, and he's now fixated on one particular thing, which is a family stay, 7-day stay at this resort and attraction complex. And he's got a date in mind, sort of it's beginning July 22nd for his date. He's doing all of this, by the way, on his mobile phone at the moment. So all of these searches are taking place on a mobile. So what does he do next? He's found the date. He likes the client. He's a loyalty client. He's a loyalty card holder for this client. And he knows his date. So what does he do next? The next thing he does is actually start comparing our client's hotels with all the other luxury hotels and other hotels in that particular region. So even though he's a loyalty card holder, even though he's clearly been there before, even though he's now price comparing based on the date that he wants to go. And then hallelujah, the next thing he does is make a booking. Isn't that wonderful? Except the booking he makes has nothing to do with all the searches that he has just done. The booking he makes is for 6 months in advance for a single day at around Christmas time to the attractions part of this resort complex. So we've seen all this search behavior, all this detailed analysis, and then he's done something entirely different as the actual conversion. And then the next thing he does, if it's not going to get worse, is he keeps shopping and looking at our client stuff, and then he actually buys a competitor product. So he buys somebody else's product for a similar thing for the periods he's previously looking out. So now we've had sort of a month's worth of purchase behavior, but actually he's done something entirely different. So we can keep going through. By I think August the 2nd, he's come back to the client. He's looking in detail. He's now got a new date in mind. He's got a November date in mind for a large, for a big family group to go to our client. And at that moment, hallelujah, he actually converts on the client for the type of thing he was looking for back in April. And now he converts in August for a trip that is now in November rather than July. But that's a big purchase, like $3,400 worth of expenditure with our client. So that's an important thing to get right. Interestingly, the following day, about 3 weeks later, he makes another booking at our client for a single day for in 3 weeks' time. So now in this period already, we've had client conversions, we've had 2 client conversions, we've had competitor conversions, we've had a booking which is 6 months in advance, and we've had a booking which is for 3 days in advance, all of this behavior. Next interesting thing he does is search for flights from New York to Orlando. Now the destination Orlando is not that surprising because that's where this particular resort complex is. The interesting thing is he lives in Florida and he's now searching for flights from New York. So is this his second family? Is he there on business? Is there something we really don't know about what Eric is doing? I mean, lots of complexity. All of this reveals is there's complexity, there's nuance, there's all the time. And then the next thing he does is actually book car hire from the airport to the resort. So clearly at some level now, he's bringing some other party or he's coming from somewhere else and connecting all these pieces through. Okay, so that's one individual. What does this really mean? All we can see in this one individual is that over this sort of period, I think this 5-month period, he's just done a ton of different searches on our client, on competitors. There's also a ton of things that I haven't said there that he looked at for other travel purchases. So this is what a real consumer is actually doing all the time. When we're all trying to go, oh, he's a loyalty card holder, he's my consumer, I'll lock in. This is actually the sort of thing that is going on all the time. So what have we really learned about Eric? We've sort of figured out that he's doing multiple different touch points, but the profile, it's not wrong, this profile. It just doesn't reveal very much about these actual behavior. The thing that actually matters to the travel marketeer is what he's looking for. What is his intent? What is the thing he wants to do at that moment in time? This profiling is sort of generically useful. And that makes Eric, at one level, typical, but obviously at the same level, unique. Because he's not a box, he's not a segment, he's a real human being doing complex and different things. So what we actually see about Eric is that say, he's a complex, nuanced human being. He books plans way in advance, and he books last minute. He gets very economic-minded about certain pricing, but he also is willing to splurge on the big trip when he wants to do it. He's a huge user of mobile, but I should have said that conversion he made for $3,400 was out of all those different things he did, that conversion happened on a desktop. So he did all this searching, and then he converted on a desktop. Not untypical, as probably most people know. A lot of conversion still in travel on desktop, but a huge amount of searching going on mobiles. So he's doing lots of different things. He's loyal to our client. He's loyal to our client, loyalty member, but he actually also shops and actually buys at competitors. So sort of unsurprising. What I want to do now quickly is just sort of raise that up quickly and to look at some of the macro things that reveals, and sort of, if the one thing we've learned about Eric, what does that mean more generically? This, I mean, you won't possibly, this is just sort of a nice eye chart, but what this chart actually represents in this period is all the pathways to purchase, broken down into some simple types. So the orange color here is homepage visits to this particular client, and all the other colors are different types of things, flight searches, etc. So luckily for this client, which is a great start, 49% of everybody who books with them does actually start that journey somewhere on the homepage for that client. But at the same time means 51% of people who would book start their thinking process, their planning process, doing things that have nothing to do with the client and the client can't see unless they're connecting the dots and looking at data more broadly. So then we start to say, well, let's find the pathways to purchase. What are the top pathways? Because that'll help us with some media strategy and planning. So these are very simplistically broken up, the top 10 pathways for this client in that period. However, I should say these 10 pathways only represent the pathways for about 20% of the bookers. So these pathways are just so complex and so built out. So again, it's only if you're looking at the real data, at the intent data, that you can drive in and hone on the right message at the right time. Tons of other stuff we can see. We can start to look at all the different event types. So a lot of the people who book have a flight search in there somewhere. What does that tell us? It might have been at the beginning, it might have been at the middle, it might have been at the end. The people who are looking for flights as well, unsurprisingly maybe, have a longer lead time. So they, you can see over there, have a much longer lead time between when they're starting to plan versus when they're going to go. So maybe that helps us think about, who am I targeting? I'm targeting flight searchers. They're going to be planning here, but the people who are not starting the flight search are going to be planning here. Different message, different time to that user. And this chart, which you can't possibly understand or see from back there, but it's another way of looking at this. It simply starts to compare the search lead time, how much in advance of going is somebody looking, versus the average trip duration. So how long are they going to stay, which for the client is the best proxy for value. If I'm going to stay 7 days, I'm going to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. If I'm going for 1 day, I'm going to spend $100. And the different colors represent different countries. So where am I coming from to go here? So again, unsurprising, the sort of orange bigger blobs you can see to the left-hand side. This is an American client. These are the North American. This is USA and Canada. Search relatively near, stay relatively short periods of time. You can start to see lots of sort of green and blue circles mapping out on the search versus trip duration time. The big blue blob right over the top right-hand corner, that's the UK. That's the UK travelers to this destination. Okay, well, that's quite different, because actually, I forget which one it is, and you wouldn't be able to see it anyway, but Germany is one of the other small blobs, but it's right down, lower down. So suddenly the UK traveler to this destination is very different from the German traveler to this destination. For some reason, the Brits are planning way in advance, but they're going to spend a ton of money when they get there. That's another useful thing for this global organization to figure out, when do I need to be talking to the Brits versus the Germans versus the French versus the Spanish versus the Canadians about when I'm going to go. all clear as mud, right? So it's all super clear. Lots of granular data, lots of different ways of working. The exciting thing is that if you build this sort of data, you sort of harness this together, you begin to be in a position to look at that circle we saw right back at the beginning of the presentation, to understand the pathway to purchase. But the great thing about that is you can then start to map what I want to say and the channel I want to use to reach that consumer at the right moment in time. Because different channels, different products, different messages are going to resonate with these consumers depending on where they are in their purchase cycle and what else they want to do. So, a lot of the early work in this sort of environment focused on this performance display. So that's display advertising, but bought programmatically, and it's a lot of what we do, and there's a number of other companies that do this, that are really trying to focus in on that moment of booking. I know you're flying to Orlando, I know you've done a search for X, Y, and Z. How do I grab that and offer you a rate, a price, and availability to get something done? But now with all of this data, we can start to look all the way around the funnel to understand different things that people can do. You can start to think more cleverly about app installs. App installs is usually a sort of how much cheap mobile traffic can I buy as much as possible to get my app out there. But with this sort of data, you start to be able to look at very specifically who are the high frequency travelers. What phase in their thinking about a destination, a resort, a thing, do they actually think about a mobile app is relevant? You can start to look at video. You can buy video based on audience targeting data. Video is phenomenally good and better than search and better than display for putting those dream messages. What really is the difference between your resort and somebody else's? Yeah, price is one, and you can do the price, but what you want to sell is something much more intangible. But if you want to sell that, you need video, and if you want to sell that using video, you want to be at the earlier stages in the customer's journey. Not when they're about to make the booking, but when they're trying to decide between the Balearic Islands or the south of France. That's the moment you want to talk to them. Native ads, we can do that. I'm getting the stop signal. So native ads, you start to build into this way. And similarly with Facebook now. Facebook is really getting its act together on travel. But again, it's going to be data-centric. You're going to know with your own data, what am I doing? What did he do on my site? What did he work? How do I then link that to the real-time pricing and availability and everything else that is going on? So thank you for that. I hope what I've shown is like just a little bit of snapshot running through, really focusing on the big data. What does it really tell us? What else can we really understand? And if you do have that data, how you can begin to connect all of those dots together and achieve some really powerful marketing messages. I know that I'm out of time and there's another speaker, but I'll be around at the back if people want to sort of connect and ask a few more questions. So thank you for your patience, thank you for your time, and thank you very much.